No, it's really the last
The reason why it's in the struggle is because it's going against it's human nature.
Okay, so I want to thank Rabbi Nachmani and the Mishpacha for this year sponsoring the Shiur. Zecher Nishmas is Heilige Father, Avinoam ben Chaim, is Nesham Shavnaliyah. Also the Parnes HaShana, לעילוי Nishmas of Gdalya ben Reb Shimon, Nesham Shavnaliyah, Shalom Simcha, Nachas and Bracha. We're learning a maimer from the Sefer Shar Hanun from the Mechaber Bilvavi Mishkan Evner from Rabbi Tamash words, to try to understand what's changed in our times, in order to be able to fight the Milchama of Yosef HaTzadik. We have to know who's the Aish Potifera of Tavshin Pei Dalet. By this time, Aish Potifera is already an old bubby. No one's interested in her. She's still some old lady sitting someplace, knitting socks for her grandchildren. No one's interested. There are other things we're interested in, not Aish Potifera. So what is the Aish Potifera of Achris Yomim, of Ikfus the Mashiach, of the end of time? And Rav Schwartz and other tzaddikim who are very, very, very connected to Pnimius Atar, to Rosen, Rabbi Shemai Morgenstern, other tzaddikim that Hashem has gifted us with in our generation, that they're watching what's happening, they see what's going on, and they also speak to a lot of Yidden from Eretz Yisrael, from Chutz La'aretz, and understand that the Milchama that we're in now is something that was never before. Not just because of the actual chomer, the material itself. There were always a person who was looking for something that wasn't nice could find an Eishes Potifar. In every generation there was an Eishes Potifar. And you ran away or you didn't run away. But there's something different about what's happening before Mashiach comes. And that's what we're learning in this Maimer. On page Shin Ayin Vav, I think most of you have the pages. If not, you have it on the phone. But we're in the middle of the page. Kamak Darish or Ein Saif. Once we understand what is it that we're fighting against, we'll be able to, the best of our ability, to be engaged in this combat, in this war of the end of time. So just the sentence at the top of the page, just let's review on Shin Ayin Vav. Just to review, if you don't have it and it's a little bit hard to listen, try. V'yesh koch noisef shemaster asa ein sof. There were always nisyanis in every generation that were trying to conceal, to cover the infinite light of Hashem, to keep Hashem's light from each and every one of us. The whole koach of Amalek is kiyad al keiska. The whole malach of Amalek is to cover Hashem, to hide Hashem. Kiyad al keiska. That's the meaning of Amalek. Kiyad al keiska. But yesh koach nosav shemaster se ein sof. Zamash mesgala koach shehu me'ein de me'ein shel ein sof. That's the nekuda primus of this maimer. All of the koiches throughout time that Hashem brought into the world to create that tension of zelu mazeh, of free choice. All of them were part of the ma'arochat of gvulim, of boundaries, of borders, that come from the range of when Adam was created and he saw for Elamad Sci-Fi, or the baby inside the mother's womb is able to see from one end of the world to the other. But there's an end. There's one end of the world to the other. It's a big playground, but it has a beginning and it has an end. But there's something different now. What we're living in now is something which has a me'ein, a koach of Ein Sof in the world of Tumah, that there never was such a thing. It's not anymore from one end of the world to the other end of the world. Now, what is this? He says Shehu me'ein de me'ein shel Ein Sof. Ein Sof is that before Mashiach comes, this is the final test that we have to contend it with and fight against something which is me'ein de me'ein Ein Sof itself. There's not talking here anymore about totem poles, about statues. Those things were big tests, bismanim, where there was a koach that people believed in, that the sun itself is a finite piece of the universe. There are others that worship the moon, and there are others that worship Elvis Presley. But whatever it was a chefza. It was part of the ma'arach of misayfa or levad sayfa. Whether it's in the sky or it's in Memphis, I think that's where it was. I don't remember. So it's misayfa or levad sayfa. It was in that. It was in the gvulim of misayfa levad sayfa. There's something else now. It's me'ein sayfa, such a thing. So let's read from in the middle of the page on Shin Ayin Vav. The different hakdoros here of Or Ein Sof, which help us to understand the zelu mazeh of the anti-Ein Sof, and how we don't have a choice anymore in our generation, us, our children, our grandchildren, unless they tap into Ein Sof. The regular stuff is not working. It's not going to work. It's not going to save us. The regular stuff. It's all part of Misafir Lamat Sefer. We have to access the koach of Ein Sof in a very strong way. So he explains. Namid B'Ktsar, the middle of Shinayin Vav. Namid B'Ktsar is chelik me'agdoros shel Or Ein Sof. Let's understand on our madrega, on our level, a little bit. What's the Hagdara? What does that mean? Or Ein Sof. And that's not saying who Hashem is. We don't. That's beyond what Hashem is. But what Hashem was Megala in this world, His presence, His Metzius is called Ein Sof. Reishis or Ein Sof or Echad. The revolution of Avram Avinu and then Torah's Moshe was the shift from many gods to one God. That his galus of that truth of Einod Mavado was the revolution of Avram Avinu. He initiated that revolution, and we're part of that until now. We're part of that Milchama to reveal Hashem echad u'shmai echad, and all that is contained in the meaning of echad. Echad doesn't mean just there's one table and not two tables. But yichud Hashem, what that means, or ein sof or echad, zui havaya achas kivyochel. Echad really means that's all there is. In be'emes, the metzius of echad means to the exclusion of all else that has a certain level of existence, but it's not elokus. Havchana nosefesh is be'etzem hagdar shel ein sof k'fi pshuto mashu ein sof hainu shel olam esgala ba'or oid v'oid. Another definition of ein sof, that it's besides that it's one, it's not many, it's one, is that it never stops. Ein sof, this or is od va'od, on and on and on. Avchana nosefesh be'ein sof, ein sof lehispashtus oira. There is no end to the hispashtus, to the spreading of its light. Now let's talk. He talks a little bit more about each of these. What this means. Lefiza, hakar shel ha'echad. The whole world of science for the past 100 years plus, really, Albert Einstein was his whole Torah was halach v'soivev, this nakuda. But this began before. But for the past 100 years plus, what's becoming very clear is that there is something in the universe that unifies all that exists. There is something that everything in existence shares in common. This koch of echad, of Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad, is that which binds together all that exists. Koch echad. Echad. Umitzad HaKedusha, Zeh ha'or ein sof, shemeir b'chol nevarim kulam. And therefore, in everything that exists, from the biggest from the biggest mountain, the greatest mountain, or the biggest animal that exists in the world, down to the tiniest little electron or whatever that there is in the world, everything. So ha'ein sof shemei b'chol nevarim. It's the same or ein sof that gives existence to Mount Everest and to the little worm. It's the same or ein sof that gives existence. It's echad. Lahavdil, just a mashal that race is, even when we use mishalom, the mishalom are not ever adequate, but the mashal that is very simple for our way of thinking is that you have in the house, and I use this many times to explain this, that a person has in the house all different kinds of appliances. So you might have a microphone, so you have a heater, you have a refrigerator. There's an or echad of electricity that's misgala in this thing as heat, and in the refrigerator as cold. But it's an or echad. It's called electricity. It's an or echad. It's one or. They're different kalim. And this or that's called electricity is mechaya, gives life to all the nivraim, all the creatures in the house. So this is a refrigerator. This is a heater. But it's an or echad. It's one or. It's just that in that kli, in that nivra, that's called a refrigerator, things get cold. It cools things. And the other thing, it's a heater. In that nivra, it makes a heat. It's the same or. It's an or echad. It's a very simple but silly also, but it's a me'ain mashu of a mashal. So there is in the house. So there's this one koach that's called electricity, and it's mechaber, and if all of the appliances in the house could talk, and they would say, "Who are you?" They wouldn't talk about the different pieces and parts. They would all point, that there's in the direction of the electric plant or the outlets. They would all point to the outlets. That's who we are. Yeah, but you're so different. You make things cold. You make things hot. Not going this. The refrigerator says, I'm nothing. I'm botul and movutul, ka'ayin mamish to the or ein soif, and he points to the outlet. He says, I said, what's that? That's it. Without this, and all the people are watching say, what is that? 2 little things in the wall, 3. What's that thing in that little thing? That's from there is the Makor Chaim. It's an or echad. All the Nevi'im. And then all the appliances in the world, everywhere in the world. Every single thing that exists, all these things from billions and trillions of appliances everywhere in the world, everything is saying it's or echad. It's or echad. It's one or. It's one or. Many, many billions and trillions of Nevi'im, but there's no or echad. It's mechaber. All of these appliances, pneumias, are mamish one, which is the meaning of Hashem echad l'shma echad. It's when Gal Mashiach comes. That everything is or echad. Page Shin Ayin Zayin. Ukeneged koyach ha'echad mitzad kedusha. Ukeneged. So we never had anything that we could speak of as being a keneged that. Keneged that. Even if you think in the mashal that we're using, what's the keneged of that mashal? A blackout. But we see that keneged ha'echad mitzad kedusha, because everything has to be the zelumazeh. Everything has to have its opposition, its inverse reality. So keneged koyach ha'echad mitzad kedusha, Yotza Kodesh Baruch Hu, there was never until our time. Yotza Kodesh Baruch Hu b'dor basra, Hashem created. He gave man the intelligence to create. And he has another mimer on that one of the Chaburah gave me the other day on artificial. Well, he speaks specifically about artificial intelligence, and that's what this is about. Yotza Kodesh Baruch Hu b'dor basra kli echad shebetzem mecharbes kol nevraim kulam. Hashem created a kli, some sort of a kli, this koach, that's mecharbes kol nevraim kulam. That not like electricity that works in that particular location and for those particular appliances in that particular house or building. But there's a koach, and that's why this is so dangerous. I read somewhere that last week there was an El Al flight over, I forgot which, Somalia, I think. Somalia, the big Rishonim in that country, and there was an El Al flight, and something with the controls with the computer on the plane wasn't right. So Baruch Hashem, they had to have a way of bypassing or dealing with it. But this is the pachad, that there's a koach, when it comes to with the computer, and especially when it comes to this thing with artificial intelligence, where it's, like we spoke about, whole virtual messiahs, that there's such a thing, that there's a kli echad shebetzem mecharbes kol nevraim kulam. That there's this kli that is mechaber, that joins together all physical reality, is mischaber, all of physical reality. Even though we don't see yet as far as living beings and animals and so on, but that's beginning to happen now with artificial intelligence to create a different reality. It's not yet, the work that they're doing on these things is not yet finished. But the direction where everything is going nowadays, the mahalach is very, very clear. The yesod of modern technology, of the internet, and especially with artificial intelligence, is a koach of echad. In Zelum Azeh, there's a koach of echad now in the world, which has the ability to join together every single thing that exists, all nivraim, physical nivraim, me'akotze l'kotze. Me'al-galgalim ha'yonim, even planets and so on, v'ad l'sata, all the way down. U'b'chol eifanim she'yeshnam b'imkein. Zeh koach echad she'betzem mechaber u'makasher es kol b'nei adam. There's a koach now that if a person knows how to use it, can connect one person to every other person in all of creation in 1 second. It could connect every single person that exists in the world in 1 second. There could potentially be a chat that has every single person in the world. There could be such a thing where you would press one button and you'd be able to send out a notice about that you're making a shalom zacha to that there's somebody's in Africa, face or someplace in Singapore, and he's looking at this thing as shalom zacha. But you're able to make with one button. You have a very big chat. This is bigger than the ladies, in the 5 towns. You have a chat that's able to reach in 1 second every single person. It's a koach of echad that there never was such a thing. That in 1 second every single person can say, Mazel Tov. And they could show you on like a film. Now people saying it like different languages. Mazel Tov. They're trying to say Mazel Tov in China. Mazel Tov. And the whole world in 1 second is giving a Mazel Tov. That is you that's sitting someplace in Muncie. The whole world is giving a Mazel Tov, and together, all together, Mazel Tov. It's an amazing thing. There was never such a thing ever that existed. You could put up notices. You could send letters. You can make billboards, but in one button, that there's a heichetimse that every single person in the world in 1 second, every single niver is able to say Mazel Tov. There was never such a thing. So there's a koach of echad that's present in the world at the end of time, but there never was such a thing. It's mechaber makasher. It's kol b'nei adam. It's kol b'nei adam. Now we're terrified, in our little world we're terrified because you're afraid that your daughter, and my granddaughter, is gonna hear from somebody who we don't want her hearing from. I don't want her to be mischaber to this goon. And how do you stop that? Because if the or is unleashed, and if that little group of girls knows whatever they're tinkering with their toy, and the button is pressed, then the bad guy is there, like the bad guy. This is the scariest thing on earth. There was never such a thing in the past. This bad guy could be in Somalia, and this is happening all the time. There was a mice last week with somebody. There's a 14-year-old, and this guy's making believe he's a 14-year-old kid. It's a whole thing with the family, and the guy's 42 years old, a creep, and he's already arranging where to meet her, a little girl with some 40-year-old sicko, and to make up to meet. This is a koyach of that ein sof in tumah. Until the last few decades, until a short time ago, the whole koach of chibur, of connection, maybe listen on the radio, there could be a report that can go out to all different places. So you could hear, or you could see on the television, you could hear on the radio. Shmur v'chaykim. Shmur v'chaykim. She's a koach hashmiya shetziroslo yilaspashet amrachal. Which, with radio waves, with the invention of all those things, and all those new kalim, things were able to travel far, they were able to go. But the chibur was a connection which only from a distance. But in our generation, our time, again, with the press of a button, there's a riyah b'chol ha'olam kula. And in addition to that, there's also the possibility that they're now working on all the time of actually being in that reality, of experiencing that reality, not just reading a paper or hearing a news report, but being there. That's what's happening now. That with this kli, one can be makif the whole world. So you want to be right now with the Kodesh Ravi. Everybody can press a button and can see who's by the Kodesh. You can see your kid and you can wave to your kid or something at the Kodesh Ravi. It's all in 1 second. Ubedakus and there's a b'nei v'novim yachas l'mashin es barlel. And we said I say to our pasha the other any yochel liros is acharav. So we learned earlier in this maimer that a person can't see behind him. Alarak espana can only see in front of you. But in order to be able to see behind you while you're looking forward, it's a very simple thing to do. You need a mirror, right? So when you have a mirror, you can be looking forward, you're facing forward, and you're looking in the mirror, and while you're looking forward, you can see something behind you. That's what you needed until now, a mirror. And we learned that you could sense something, you could feel something, you could intuit something that's behind you, but to see something, to mama see something behind you, until now you needed a mirror. Or a photograph, film. However, with the koach, so that was until now. A picture, a mirror. What's happened in our generation? There's no longer anything that's behind you. There's no longer anything that's out of your range of vision. Nothing. You don't need a picture. You don't need a movie. There's nothing that's not in your range of vision. Everything is now panim. You're facing everything. All the time. You're facing everything. The entire mahalach that was in the beginning of time, from Adam and Chava were first back to back and didn't face each other, couldn't see each other, that whole mahalach since the time of creation, where everything was divided into two ways of seeing, front and back, that's how everything existed until now. That's all different now. All of that has changed. Mikan veilach nepach ha'achor, and there's no longer something that's on the other side. There's no longer a sitra achor, the other side. What's the other side? It's no longer on the other side. It's no longer behind you. Mizgala gam kipanim. Now it's mizgala kipanim. In your face. There it is. You could see everything from all the sides in all 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, whatever, more. I don't know whatever dimensions there are. It's nothing now to see. And it's different than a mirror. Everything until now was anything outside of your immediate range of vision was a bechina of achor. B'matzu shel hashta ev shel osa osa b'kalus zon ken koch shel acharayim shegam bo shelet metzias shel ra. And achor, there's a terrible metzias of ra that used to be something that was not visible to you or was not accessible to you, and now it's a press of the button. This is the koch of this kli that's mechaber es kol olam kulo mitzat ha'echad sheba. This is the koch of echad in the kli, of one. It's me'ein Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad in our experience. Page Ayin Ches. Then we learned that there's another aspect or geder to this infinite light of Hashem. The simple pshat is, commission is bar something that continues on and on. Says mizgala bekli kivyachol me'ein kach shel ein sof. So what's mizgala in this kli kivyachol is me'ein this kach of ein sof. Uchemuvan bebriya ein davar she'ein lo sof. Obviously, in all that was created, there is a sof. There has to be a sof. We don't see the end of it. We don't know the end of the universe. But everything that exists, by virtue of it being part of the bria, it has an end. So I'm not talking about absolute infinity, because only Hashem. We don't know what that means. But because the universe itself is also finite. But as far as our experience is concerned, the kli that's now here in the world that Hashem created at the end of time has me'ain this kach of something that doesn't end. As far as how we experience it, it's something that doesn't end. Which is one of the reasons why it's for so many people it becomes almost impossible to put down. It doesn't have a saif. Until now, you have a taiva, it has an end. You have something that you're interested in, it has an end. You look at this, you see it, and this does. But you like to read, you read another book. But that on the same kli, that there's something that doesn't stop. And each thing leads you to another thing. That's what they call a link. Right? So every single thing is linking you and on. There's a whole shalshelis throughout all of creation. That if a person would live that amount of time, he'd be able to be linked to every single thing that exists in the world. He'd be able to be linked up to. If he would just continue with pressing the button, it would go on, and he would be linked indefinitely. Again, for those who learn this from, you know that the world, with all worlds, in each world, the Olam HaElyon, the higher dimension of existence, in relation to the lower level of existence, that higher one is, Chazal tell us, is called Ein Sof. Because it doesn't have the sof it doesn't have the end or the ceiling of the lower world. So the higher level of existence or world, vis-a-vis relative to the lower world, is Ein Sof. Because when the lower world ends, that's the Sof. And then, there's something else. So vis-a-vis the lower world, the next level is called Ein Sof. See, when the mitzad the atzmus, in other words, when you go onto, you press a button and it takes you someplace. Mitzad infinite and finite, that next site that the computer takes you to is finite. But vis-a-vis relative to where you're coming from, it's opening you up to something which is me'ain, infinite. Because it's taking you out of your Dalet Amos. And it's opening you up to something. So that next site that you're looking at, because then that next one also has other things to link you to something else. So it's me'ain, b'chin of ein sof. Since it's not the end, since it doesn't have your ceiling, it takes you to another world relative to you. This next world, this next site on your computer, is a b'chin of ein sof, and you can continue on with that. L'chein hu nikra davar she'ein lo sof, davar she'ein lo sof, which was nothing like when we were growing up. We had when we were growing up, it was only you had till channel 13, and then it became with cable, and it became that there was a tesefis and a reboy of all to go to other stations and so on. But every time it's not that one station is linking you to another station. You just turn the channel, you press the button, and that's an oilam oimid b'fnei atzmo. It's not that when you went from channel 5 to channel 7, that channel 7 was leading you or bringing you or introducing you or taking you to some creep in channel 5 billion to the million. It wasn't doing that. It was just it was a separate island. This was another world, and the 2 has and 2 there's Walter Cronkite, Elab Dorton. That's where Walter Cronkite lived on channel 2, if I remember correctly. And then you had then you went to other islanders, but each island had its own Dalet Amis, and it wasn't a ticket to a different world. It wasn't an opening to something indefinitely to be mispashed od va'od va'od. Didn't have any od va'od. It stopped. You went from channel 2, you went to channel 7 again, and then what we used to do is we just go back and forth 1,000 times looking for something interesting on all the same channels. Which is when they got the remote control, it became easier. You don't have to walk over to the thing and start. You don't have to get up and start turning it around the thing. My uncles, my cousins, they got a remote control. We were all like the neighbors came. We were looking like whoa! And everybody got a chance to try it. And it was like, how do you sit over here and it goes over there? And this is not a long time ago, but but that was all you could do. You go back and forth, 2, 4, 5. That's it. That was it. You go back and forth over the same thing. You just keep on going back and forth. But it had a very, very strong saif. And each one was a different island. It was a 2, and there was a 4 and 5. It was a separate world. Again, that's not how it is now. That's not how this works at all. The technology, the b'chalal now. It's a me'ain of Ein Sof. Well, Kavan she'ein lo is that's how it is now. What's mizgala in this kli now, in technology now? There's a metzias of riboy. That's not anything you could press on the remote control or that just with the set or the buttons. It's it's beyond anything that a human being can comprehend. It's not Ein Sof because this is a world of Sof, but it's nearer Ein Sof. We experience it Ein Sof. The Rachmanis is lying there at 3 o'clock in the morning. He's got to go to daven at 6 o'clock, and he's lying there 3 o'clock because this thing took him to this reporter took him to the next reporter, and this reporter talking about it in a nice way, and this reporter took him another report, and this reporter took him the other report. This is an Indian of Ein Sof. It's a bechin of Ein Sof. There's the quantity of information of Yediyas Mavhila. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. Mavhila is frightening. Meduba al milyarde Yediyas, trillions of Yediyas. Sheklodem lo hayochel adalse samadiyam. That nobody was able to find out about or know about until now. Nobody was able to find out about it. I remember there was something that I was looking up to write something, a paper. How many times did I have? And I was meshugah to find out this Indian, and I was working on this Indian or something. But I was writing a paper, whatever, in school, and I got on the bus and I went to the library in Jamaica, and then in the library I had to drag around for an hour or two, looking here, looking there, and with all the cards and finding and looking, and then in this book, the book sent you to another book, and you had to ask, where do I find this book? That for one piece of information, it wouldn't take a half of a second. And a million trillion times more than the books that when they're sitting in that library. That in the past, wasn't that it was behind you or on the side. This wasn't bichlal shaykh to you. And even if it's something that you knew that existed, any information that you could get would be very little. How would you get information? Again, you went to the library, and the library didn't have on this Indian and how did you find it, and so on. So you have to go to the Library of Congress to get this. And to go to the Library of Congress, and you have to go. There's a bigger library someplace. I went to, many times. I made a special trip to Manhattan to go to the big library of Manhattan for a certain thing that's in the Svarim that you couldn't get anywhere. That in America, I had to go to the library in Manhattan. I had to wait there and give all the information. And there was actually a firm librarian many years ago with the Svarim. To be able to pull out a sefer. And then I'd get the sefer and I would say, no, it's not this one. It was a whole trip to Manhattan to look up something in a sefer. This wasn't an unusual thing. And that was it. Ad Kan. That was the world that you lived in. Avul, but now, Ramat HaMeida Shekayemes Sham Himav Isa. The information that a person can access is, again, a pachad. Me'evil gvulas hasechel anoshi klal beyond this, the gvulim, the boundaries, the borders of the human mind, of comprehension. And now with this artificial intelligence we were talking about last week, you can already have a hechetim, so where it's creating and thinking and reasoning, and you could argue with it. So there's a mitzias that's now begeder me'ein ein sof. Mikol makom b'zeh atzmo shemunach b'kli hazeh mitzias shel ribui sheme'ever l'gulus tfisas adam zeh gufa kisui shel al or ein sof. So in our times, Hashem has allowed into the world before Mashiach comes a covering of His infinite light, a covering to our Yiddishkeit and our life and the purpose of our life, which we're just on the threshold of Mashiach and living a life with Ein Sof. Hashem has unleashed, He's released into the world a kisui, a covering, an amalek. It's a bechina me'ein Ein Sof. Yesh kan koch kivyachol shel Ein Sof. Until now, you were worried about your daughter from the walk that she had to make from the bus stop to get to school, that she shouldn't meet anybody. That's not nice. Nothing should happen to her. You look back now, it was like a joke. That from the 2 blocks to go from the bus to get to that was the pachad that we had, is that our parents had a pachad. What's going to happen from the bus to what's going to happen? Ein Sof. What could happen? Ein Sof. What could happen? This is a kisui. This is the yad al keis ka before Mashiach comes. The hand that is covering that is the zelu mazeh of or Ein Sof at the end of time. Yesh kan koch kevyach shel Ein Sof shemak bilo or Ein Sof b'chinas Adam le'elyon. Just like man is called Adam, and the Ramban brings down the pasuk Adam le'elyon, because man resembles Kivyachol in the strongest way the Creator. There is in the world now this koach that's Adam le'elyon. It looks like it's God. If the Anshe Knesset Gedolah would not have removed the taiva for the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, people nowadays would be bowing down to their computer. They'd be bringing offerings to the computer. Maybe that's coming up. They'd be bowing down to the computer because it's like this is it. There's nothing else that could compare to this. Angel Oscha, that's what it looks like. Efes Biltecha. That's what it looks like. Even though it's Adam, it seems that way. Again, because it's not. Because it's a dimyon. So it seems that way. It's in the world of Ra, in that world of Kilkulim. But still, it is Adam. it is that which it resembles this. Shemisra kivyoho kekor she'ein lo sof. I mean, the ancients were bowing down to the sun because they saw it made their crops grow. So that was the whole koich, and it was nice. It was warm. So it was warm, and it made things grow. And that was enough to already have a whole of a desert. The whole of a desert of the Shemesh was something for thousands of years. People were worshiping the sun because it had this koich. But the koich was a koich prati. It was a particular koich that the sun had, and already it became a whole Elohus for the ancient world. And even nowadays, there's some people proud. But it was a whole Elohus. And it was one prat in creation. It was a little prat in creation. Or a big prat, but it was a prat in creation. And they're already worshiping that. And that all kinds of God. God for this, a God for this, a God for that. So this is Adame. Adame. What's the Adame? Adame means compared, similar, resembles. Shemisraya kivyoho kekor she'ein lo sof. Because there is something now in the world that presents itself, that appears to be koach she'ein lo sof. And there are billions of people that are bowing down to it. Not on their knees. There are billions of people that are bowing down to it. Akidekach, that even when it's a few minutes of the day, when it's time to bow down, there's time to bow down to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. There's somebody sitting in a shul bowing down to it. It's a koach that was never saw anybody bring a little television set into the shul. And there was a time that they made very little ones. I remember they came out with very little ones. Don't tell me you did that. Somebody was smiling when I said that. I don't know. I'm not talking about now. I'm saying in those days when there was a television. Nobody ever brought a television. So at the same time that in this part of the whole Dimyan, at the same time that it gives millions of shiurim, and you could sit here and you could watch Rabbi Friend and enjoy wonderful Rabbi Cong and all the wonderful shiurim that are your favorites, and you could sit and you could watch that while you're Chalila someplace in Somalia. You could watch your favorite shiur, and there's this koach, unbelievable koach l'toiv that gives a person the ability to be every single place at every shiur at the same time. But in the kilkul of it, so at the same time that it's able to reveal the Or of Hashem, because you could watch the Koisel right now, and you could FaceTime your kids in Eretz Yisrael. That's a thing of Kedusha to say hello to your kids. They should see you, and you could throw them a kiss. That's gewaldig. There never was such a thing. The FaceTime is the most amazing thing. To be able to see your children, your grandchildren, it's a gewaldig thing. But at the same time, that very same kli, as much as it opens us up to the Or Ein Sof Mamish Hashem, it's master u'ma'alim. It covers and hides the Ein Sof in such a way that there was never such a thing that could cover and conceal and hide and prevent a person from having any shaykhis to the Infinite One, like now, like this. Never ever such a thing. Okay, so we'll finish this part of the Maimer Mission next week, and we'll talk about contending and Knemius, and then in a very, very practical, I promise we'll talk a little bit more practical.
Early Mission 1240.
Shkaya.
We'll go further than Shania and Ted. I'll take some pictures.